This is Michael Clifford from LowKick MMA. I'm speaking with Brave lightweight John Brewin ahead of his Brave CF44 clash. First off, how's everything been? I mean, it's been a crazy year for pretty much every mixed martial artist, but how has it been for you in particular?
Yeah, it's been just as crazy, I think, as everyone else. But no, it's been a blessing in disguise. 2020 has been the best year of my life in a weird way. So I don't know how many people can say that. So I'm pretty happy that I'm in the position I'm in now.
So when did you arrive in Bahrain? Because you're from New Zealand, so that's a fair distance away. How long did it take you to get there, and when did you touch down?
We touched down on Sunday morning around 10 a.m. So it's Tuesday morning now. So we've been there about 48 hours. Um, it's a long journey coming from New Zealand. Yeah, it's about 24 hours total travel time, and we kind of wind back the clock coming from New Zealand by 10 hours. So I lived Sunday twice, like full on. So that was pretty hectic. I didn't sleep on the plane, so I probably had like 60 hours straight being awake, and then I stayed up the whole time when I got here, so that I could adjust for the and not be all like jet lagged and everything like that. So I'm back on my regular schedule. I wake up at 5 a.m. and do my thing, me and my coach, and then get the day started. So it's all good.
How was it like for you to finally be back and ready to fight? Because I think when I last spoke to you was the day before they did a lockdown in New Zealand. You were due to that was when you go and fight Sam Patterson. Then everything, obviously, the world went kind of different. So what's it like just to be? You're in Bahrain, you have the fight, you know your opponent's there, you know it's going to happen. What's that just like for you mentally?
Yeah, like I'm just super grateful that it's all come together. I've been I kind of accepted the fact that okay, maybe you're not fighting this year. You know what I mean? And I took the positives that I could from that. You know what I mean? It by no means does it mean that I'm happy to not be able to fight or anything like that. But I just realized that, if my fights don't happen because of COVID-19, it's not like the whole world stops. Everything's still going on. People still living and breathing back home, and all my family still have the same problems or whatever's going on. So I need to be able to help out in any way I can, and I got to live my life whether they give me a chance to fight or not. So now I'm just taking it as like a massive blessing. You know what I mean? It's no longer like, oh, I have to train, I have to diet, oh, I can't eat this, I can't eat that. It's all like, oh man, I get to do this for real. Like, thank whoever's upstairs. You know what I mean? So yeah, super happy to be here. I saw the cage yesterday. I can't wait to fight in the empty arena. Like it's just like a sparring day. And in our sparring days, we've got 100 people in the gym. Like, so it's going to be less people in the gym than a sparring day for me. So it's going to be crazy. Yeah.
So you're fighting Rolando D. This is his second time in the Brave cage.
Yeah.
He got a split decision over the Magic Man. What are your thoughts of him as opponent? Because I know he's obviously faced off against one of your colleagues, Shane Young, over at Kickboxing.
That's right.
But I mean, things change. Fires are different. What are you expecting from him to bring later this week when you meet her?
Well, I've met Rolando before, so I kind of know his style and like how he likes to fight, and I let my coaches take care of the analysis and what tools we're going to use and everything like that. And yes, right off the bat, they kind of understand what he does well from that fight with Shane, but they also know that I'm 6'1" and Shane is like 5'9" and Rolando's like 5'8". And I've been preparing this whole time for someone who's 6'3". So it's a much different kind of situation, but it's not something that we feel like we weren't able to prepare for or anything like that. I think we've got a good game plan and stuff like that. So without giving too much away, it's going to be a little bit different game plan. I can't just go in there thinking, oh, Shane Young got him, I'll get him too. You know what I mean? No, it's been very specific preparation for this in the past couple of weeks since we got the change. So yeah, I'm happy with where we're at. I think I'm going to put on an outstanding performance.
And speaking of coaches, I mean, now you were in Bali MMA and now you're back in Auckland, New Zealand, and you're training at City Kickboxing. What's that experience been like for you in terms of acclimatizing to a new gym culture and fitting in, and just what have you been working on, I guess, in the intervening months between when you're meant to fight and now that you are fighting?
Yeah, like the long story is it's been like a great experience coming home and staying home and getting to really like kind of appreciate what we have in our backyard. So people talk about, oh man, I can't wait to travel and all that kind of stuff. And I'm sitting there now and I'm like, I want to get home. You know what I mean? I love being in Bahrain. Don't get me
Mm.
wrong, and I love traveling and fighting and stuff like that. But it's not that I don't want to travel and see new places, but it's that I know what I've got back home is something special, you know, and that goes for the place, the people, the culture, and our gym at City Kickboxing is it truly is the best gym in the world. Um, it's hard to put into words what we do differently there because it's just a total package there. You know, it's all the training partners, it's all the coaches, it's the wealth of knowledge, it's the winning culture. It's just yeah, it's just something in the water there, and I think they do a great job, the coaches, in facilitating that, and all the training partners and stuff. I can't thank them enough for welcoming me home and getting me to this point. You know, making me feel so welcome, making me feel so at home there, and um, and then learning so much over the year. It's really one of those things where if I had a fought really actively 6 times this year, I wouldn't have been able to soak in some of these lessons because I wouldn't have been taking the time to, you know, slow down and integrate some of the different systems that they put in place. So, yeah, that's why I say it's been such a blessing in disguise. All these fights falling through, and the mental challenges that come with that is good as well. You know.
And do you think we're going to see a different John Brewin in the cage? Do you feel like you've changed quite a bit as a fighter since you've had this kind of time off just to focus on your craft?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you're definitely going to see a much more advanced product. Um, but whether people will be able to pinpoint what's different, I don't know. You know what I mean? Because
Mm.
there's a lot of subtleties in martial arts. You know what I mean? So a lot of the time, when people are on a high level, like to another person, it's just another jab or another right cross or whatever, and oh somehow he's just slipping that punch. You know what I mean? But there's very fine details to that I don't think most people pick up on. So that's just fine with me. You know what I mean? I think moving forward and collecting a whole bunch of wins, that's enough for me. I don't think people really take too much notice of what changes I've
Mm.
made, which is quite interesting. Yeah.
Are you enjoying the process though? Are you like maybe the average person might not notice, but you as a fighter, as a martial artist, are you enjoying like just going deeper and deeper into technique and picking
Oh
up
yeah,
little
like
things and
100%.
subtleties?
Yeah, I just get my mind blown every now and then. You know what I mean? Like some days you're a little bit sore and you're a little bit, you know, especially over the year where you're thinking, oh man, my fight just got cancelled. Um, but out of respect to my training partners and my coaches, I'm not going to take off and disappear for 2 weeks. I'm going to show up to the gym, and maybe your body's sore, and you go in, and within 5 minutes of being on the mat, one
Mm.
little detail jumps out at you, and you say, okay, that's why you don't take a week off in the middle of the year when a fight gets cancelled, because you would have missed that absolutely critical detail that no one would be able to see from outside the cage unless you're inside the gym having somebody show you that detail specifically based on the mistake you're making during a drilling session. That's where all the money is made. You know what I mean? That's where fights get finished. It's just
Mm.
yeah. That's when you really level up. You know, which has been really, really, motivating and inspiring for me.
Mm. And I suppose now we're going to talk about the Brave lightweight division because
Yeah, sure.
the main events there, you know, it's going to be the Predator is going to be defending his lightweight crown. I'm
Yeah,
sure you're going to be an interested, you know, you got your fight to focus on, but
sure.
are you going to be a keen observer on that fight?
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm not too sure when I saw the cage yesterday. I was like, oh, I forgot that like you can't just walk up and sit down ringside and everything like that. They're probably going to have you out back watching the TV or whatever it is. But yeah, I'm hoping that I can get the job done nice and easy and then or nice and quickly, let's say, and get out back and shower and sit down and watch that fight and just see how those guys go. But I think at the end of the day, like watching them on Thursday night is not going to really help me or tell me much about what's going to be put together when I eventually get my chance to fight them next. Is
Mm.
because you know my coaches will take care of that. They'll get the footage and then they'll watch it and then they'll tell me, nope, whatever you thought was wrong, this is what you have to do. You know, what I mean, this is how you have to fight, and then I just have to listen to that. So that's cool.
Mm.
Yeah.
And who's in your corner with you at the moment? Because I know that back in CKB, they got their training out. They got Junior Farr training for a big boxing
Yeah.
bout with Joseph Parker. So who's come over with you to Bahrain?
Well, that's a crazy situation. There is that I've actually got my old stablemate and lifelong mentor Mike Ikile from Bali out with me because Like, as you guys might know, we've got very strict quarantine regulations in New Zealand, and we've had such a busy year in the past kind of like 2 months specifically. Like, we've got Israel, Brad, and Carlos all in Vegas now. They'll be doing quarantine after this. We had those 10 guys who went out to Vegas, basically our core coaching team, who just got fresh out of quarantine as well. And the rest of the boys who I could have brought over with me, um, they would have gone to Vegas with the UFC guys, but they don't have visas that they can get back into the country because of the quarantine. So if they're from Australia, even though Australians have good visa status here in New Zealand, they don't have the status where they can leave and come back and at all, so to speak. So they can't even go in and come back and do the quarantine. If they leave, they go back to Australia. So
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So
so it's kind
exactly.
of crazy. You know, we got a couple of other boys from France or from England and stuff like that. The same thing. They're on business visas. If they leave, they don't get the option of the quarantine. That's them done. So, and then on top of that, when you look at the other boys who can get back into the country, you're not taking them away from their jobs and their families for 5 days. You're taking them for me, it's going to be 26 days. So that to me, to turn to take a coach away from their potential earnings and their family and their own potential growth as a fighter or as a coach is not something that I was all too comfortable with, and the timing as well made it quite difficult. So I opted to reach out to Mike, and he was more than happy to get on a plane and get out of Bali for a fight show. So this will be his first international fight show since the COVID kicked off. And luckily for him, he's on a good visa in Bali, so he walked straight back in with a negative COVID test, and he's good to go straight back into the room. So for him, it is just 5 days, you know. So that's perfect. And then
It worked out really well.
yeah. So it's great. It's great.
What's it? Because you know, for city kickboxing, people there's certain names that everybody in MMA knows. You know, Israel, Dan Hooker.
Yeah.
But then you have people like yourself, John. You know, John Brewin. You got Carlos over there in the UFC,
Yeah.
competing as well. What do you think is the talent pool like in New Zealand at the moment? You know, internationally, people may not really know how deep it is, but what do you think is coming in the next pipeline down the next year or so, and fighters they're going to be fighting, you know, all around the world?
Yeah.
How do you see the landscape?
Man, it's silly. It's silly how deep the talent pool is. In every weight class. We're not like one of those gyms that has a whole bunch of 125ers and 135ers. We've got them stacked from those bottom weight classes all the way to heavyweight. Like New Zealand, 100%, we're the land of the heavyweights and the light heavies. Like if you want those guys, come to us. But middleweights, welterweights, lightweights, there's like, we have at least 5 world-class guys in every single division ready to go right now. Like I'm looking at, and this is not, you know, this is not meant with any disrespect, but we've got guys that will take every single bout in this organization. If we got the chance, we take every single one. We've got middleweights, we've got welterweights, 3 or 4 of them come through and absolutely wreck shop. You know what I mean? We've got a couple more lightweights that would come in and take out the top 5, and that's not me boasting or putting on a front or anything like that. That's just the reality of how it works. And you know, the sad thing is like we don't all get a shot because there's too many of us, and there's not enough opportunities for us to get going, especially with coronavirus at the moment. So I think the blessing in disguise out of all of this is that New Zealand has such strict guidelines. We've controlled it so well that if this keeps happening and keeps plaguing the international fight scene, they're going to have to start pulling more guys from here and just deal with the fact that, yeah, you will have to pay a little bit more for the flights, but at least you're going to get someone with a negative COVID test come out and he'll be ready to go, you know? So that's kind of something that I'm excited for.
Is that something you would like to see? You would like to see, I mean, more New Zealanders competing under the Brave banner? Could you see that, you kind of like starting the trend, I guess? Would you like to see more Kiwis coming over? Because as you said, there's obviously a lot of talent in New Zealand, and Brave's still a growing organization. I'm sure they would love to have more fighters coming over there that can with your skill set.
Yeah, I think so. As long as it works out contractually for those guys, like I would never want anyone to, as a fighter, you got to be smart, because it's like, you know, whenever you sign a multiple fight deal or whenever you lock yourself in, you're with those guys now. You know what I mean? And that takes you off the table. There's an opportunity cost to everything in this game. You know, I've been with Brave for a long time now, and so they've always been good to me, and we've got a good working relationship. So it's mutually beneficial for us at this stage, you know. And moving
Mm.
forward, I've got visions to do big things with Brave, and I think that I'll be taking this bout in my next fight. That's what I see happening. That's what I'm envisioning, and I think that's what I deserve. Um, but for the other boys, yeah, it's case by case. But I think that I would definitely love to see them get a crack. I'd definitely love to see a couple boys come out with me for the next show. Hey, listen, guys, you guys need a welterweight, you need a middleweight. Give us a one fight deal. Have it. Take a look at this guy. You know what I mean?
Mm,
And
mm.
if you like what you see, then give him a fair shot. You know what I mean? You can offer him, um, a fair shake on the financial front. Then you'll have something very special here. You know what I mean? But you're just going to have to give these guys a fair shake. I think that's all it takes.
Because you're in an interesting position because you're competing for Brave. You were training at Bali MMA, which had a lot of one championship fighters.
Yeah,
You're at City Kickboxing now that has a lot of fighters within the UFC.
yeah.
Has it been interesting for you, in a sense, seeing how different organizations operate, how different organizations are structured? Do you notice any kind of differences with Brave, or is there kind of a similarities that all the major promotions have?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I've been really blessed in that regard. Like as a young fighter to have, you know, 7 pro fights. I've been fighting professionally for 2 years. You know what I mean? And I feel like I've got such a huge knowledge of the game because I've been able to go out. I've seen UFC shows live in the flesh in New Zealand. I've been to like 7 different Brave shows in different nations. I've been a guest or a cornerman at probably more one championship shows than I can even remember. So, like from the inside, as a coach or a cornerman, as a fighter, as a guest, and just as a fan, I've been all over the world and seen how all these different organizations work. I'm like, you know, I'm in contact with the guys at one championship. I'm in contact personally with the guys at Brave at all different levels. So it's really interesting to have that kind of understanding, deeper understanding early in my career, how they all work. And yeah, I think they all do it slightly differently. Um, and yeah, you know, the UFC kind of, the way I describe it is that they kind of have like the WWE mindset, WWE promotional model. They dominate the Western market. One championship has the Eastern martial arts philosophy. That's their angle with how they promote themselves and how they, you know, how they dominate that Eastern market. And then Brave has their own system coming from their base in the Middle East and then going completely global with the sport. You know, they have their own system of promotion that's very unique as well. So it's quite cool. You know, I don't get too tied up in it. You know, like I'm more like an armchair analyst. You know what I mean? Like so, I'm sitting there, I'm fighting for these guys, or I'm going out to different shows, and I'm sitting back. I'm not saying nothing, but I'm taking it all in. You know what I mean? So I think that I'm going to be able to take a lot from that moving forward as a fighter, and then eventually, whether it be as a mentor or a coach or a manager or whatever kind of involvement I have later in life in the sport, I think I'll be well set up for it. Yeah.
I mean, carrying on from that, as a person, in terms of your own growth and growing up and everything, what's it been like for you to be surrounded, I guess, with so many different types of cultures? You know, it's quite a rare opportunity you've had to kind of be with, you know, in Bali and Bahrain and, you
Yeah.
know, back home. What's that been like just for your personal kind of development? As it must be pretty interesting.
That's crazy, man. Like I got the most messed up accent in the world, I think. You know what I mean? Like, and sometimes I catch myself slipping, and I'm like, bro, what? When did you start saying that? You know what I mean? Um, so yeah, I just feel like I've always been someone when I was growing up, like I loved Asian culture, and I was always fascinated by it. My old man actually used to sell seafood to Taiwan and things like that. Like,
Oh, yeah,
so
yeah,
I
yeah.
was always into like kind of like the Asian food scene in New Zealand. We go like, you know, and we have good relationships with these restaurants and stuff. So that was always like mind blowing to me. And then at the same time now, like, you know, I'm living in Mangere in the 275 and like, you know, I'm really trying to embed myself and make a difference in that community. So, you know, we've got the island community out there. My mum's Maori. I've lived in Bali. I've lived in Thailand. All of my best friends over there in Bali were Malaysians. And then I fought in the Middle East. I fought in India. I fought in Pakistan. All these places with all these kind of different backgrounds, you know. I fought in Taiwan. I fought in the States as an amateur. It's just crazy, you know what I mean? Like the journey that fighting's given me, and sometimes I don't even realize it. You know what I mean? Like when I know that people travel and stuff like that, and that's great, but to travel the way that we do it as fighters is very, very different, and it's I think it's quite humbling because you're not traveling to beach clubs. You're not traveling. You don't go to Greece and buy, you know, $100 bottles of wine and sit on the beach and do like, you know, big beer tours through Czechoslovakia or whatever it is. You know, you're like, you're in it. You know what I mean? You're like staying with fighters. You know, when I fought in Australia for the first time as a pro, I wasn't in no hotel and stuff. I was staying with my coach's friends in their spare room. You know what I mean? I go to Malaysia, I'm staying in the village. You know what I mean? And that's just that's just the way to do it. You know, I wouldn't have it any other way. I love the way that fighting has taken me around the world and given me so much experiences, different places and different cultures. You know, so it's pretty amazing.
And I guess my final question is, obviously martial arts is a huge part of your life, and just hearing you describe, you know, the experience you've had, it's given you a whole lot. How do you see your career developing, both in martial arts and maybe, you know, when you stop competing? Do you have maybe like 5, 10 year kind of goals that you're kind of working towards, or at the moment you're just focusing on the here and now?
Yeah, like at the moment I'm focusing on the here and now because I think that's the way you make the biggest impact. And yeah, by doing that, you're going to go further in the future, regardless of what you plan for yourself or what you envision for yourself. And at the same time, I'd have to say that like um, when I first got into fighting and when I first turned professional, I thought, oh, okay, I'll just be in this sport for the rest of my life. You know, as a coach or as a mentor or as a manager, I'll just transition straight into that once I finish fighting. But now I kind of like look at myself and I'm thinking, okay, like what's the biggest difference you can make? Like I got a good head on my shoulders. I like to think like I don't have to fight to make money. I fight because I truly love it and for all the reasons I just described earlier about traveling and culture and everything like that. But I think there's a way that I can mobilize and monetize some of the skills and lessons that I've learned, and then eventually, I think I'll be able to find a way where I can make the biggest impact in my communities, whether that be through fighting or whether that be through kind of mobilizing the principles and the knowledge that I got in this game and applying that to something else or building something else. You know what I mean? Outside of the sport, but at the same time, like I know that I'm never going to be very far from this game. You know what I mean? I think that yeah, I feel like I could still do something in the sport at any stage. You know.
Mm. Oh, that's great. Well, thanks for that. I'll let you get going now. I know you've probably been doing plenty of interviews and that. So all the best for the fight coming up. And hopefully next time we're speaking to you, it's Bruno before a title fight.
Yeah, 100%, man. That's the next step for me. So yeah, much appreciated. Thank you for the time, Mike. Yeah, guys like you make it happen, you know. So I don't actually mind doing the media as much as people think because it's chill. It's something to do when you're stuck in the hotel. So I appreciate you having me on, bro.